Today, I'm coming to you with something deadly serious when it comes to digital ID and social credit scores. Unfortunately, we are inching closer to these systems becoming a reality on the blockchain. Now, if you're not familiar with blockchain, and you don't have to be invested in crypto to understand the blockchain, and understand that blockchain is going to affect you regardless. Web3, the third iteration of the internet, is being built on the blockchain right now. So regardless if you invest in crypto, your entire life, from banking to the mortgage or deed to your property or home, to your business, to everything you interact with, everything you purchase, is getting ready to be put on blockchain. And if you don't tether this to benefit you, you are going to suffer greatly. Now, just as a quick synopsis, because most people I talk to who say they invest in crypto and know everything about crypto and blockchain know literally nothing about it, almost nothing. 9 out of 10 people you meet who invest in crypto know nothing about crypto and how it works. They're just trying to make some money. There's nothing wrong with trying to make a couple of bucks, but you need to know how the stuff works and how it's getting ready to be used against you. I'm going to show you 15 blockchains and break down exactly how they are using these blockchains against you on the validator consensus level, and several other blacklists. Cryptos that you probably own can blacklist and pivot your addresses if you don't do a couple simple steps. And we're going to talk about that right now. So again, real quick, blockchain, a distributed ledger with a growing list of records, blocks, that are securely linked together via cryptographic hashes. So you're going to have hashes similar to other security-based measures and nodes. Each block contains cryptographic hash of the previous block, a timestamp, a transaction date, generally represented the Merkle leaves, or data nodes represented by leaves. So in a consensus, I know most of you don't know what that means, but this is the core basic fundamental. Blockchains are typically managed by a peer-to-peer, P2P computer network for use of public distributed ledgers where nodes collectively adhere to a consensus algorithm protocol, a CAP, and add, validate new transaction blocks. Now, this is really important for you to understand. You don't have to understand the technical side, but you need to understand why they're fixing to use this against you. And I'm going to show you these 15 blockchains, and many of them are really popular chains that are getting ready to be used against you momentarily. I've been talking to a lot of people in the European government, in the Canadian government, and this is coming to a place near you soon. Also, the Australian government. This is really going to hit hard. So you may have seen in the United States, we recently had what's called the Genius Act. Now in the US, we do what's called congressional stringing. What congressional stringing is we take a series of bills, we put pieces of laws that we want in those bills, and then when you string them together, you get the law you want. This is how our politicians completely and absolutely stab the American citizens in the back time and time again, is through congressional stringing. So you may have seen the Genius Act. You may have also heard of the Big Beautiful Bill and several other bills in the crypto space that have passed. Well, what they are looking at doing is they are looking at using several different blockchains. Recently, over 200 blockchains were basically broke down on an admin level, things that you can't see because you don't have validator consensus access. So even if you buy the blockchain and you understand the core consumer side smart contracts. See, a lot of people think of smart contracts is a good thing. Peer-to-peer, you can decentralize them, you can do a lot of these things. But on the validator consensus administrative side is where it gets tricky in these smart contracts. And most people don't understand how smart contracts work. Again, they think they do, but they've never got in the weeds. They've never built one. They've never designed one. They don't understand how they can do reactive nodes, ELs, EPIs, and restructure this for their benefit, which is what a lot of blockchains are doing. And they're doing it based on demands of world governments. So world governments are actually pushing this stuff so they can propagate everything that they're doing on their blockchain. The first one we're going to talk about is HBAR. But before we get into that, they're using smart contracts with higher coded freezes. So you're going to see a lot of higher coded freezes. You're also going to see direct blacklists. You're going to see direct embed to the blockchain, and you're going to see configure-based freezes. Now, these are all variations of how they can blacklist, take your crypto, reroute your crypto, and basically do whatever they like with it. Now, I think HBAR is one of the worst when it comes to this. And I'm not telling you need to run out and sell all these. We're going to talk about some solutions here in a minute, but you need to know what you're getting into. HBAR actually has admin level token freeze control. So on the admin side, they have token freeze controls, meaning they can take your tokens and blacklist them, embed them to the blockchain, which in theory, you've probably heard the term burning. They basically can burn your crypto anytime they want. You do not get a penny for this. You're just SOL. So whether you have $1 in HBAR or $1 million in HBAR, they can make it disappear like that. And there's nothing you can do about it from a legal standpoint or from a technical standpoint. It just is what it is. Now, HBAR is being used in a lot of iterations of processing the trust layer of the digital economy. Not so much the digital economy, but they're looking at using it across Europe with digital IDs. And this is going to allow them to embed it into social credit scores as a framework. Utilizing this technology as the framework will allow them to turn on and off potential privileges anytime they would like travel and other things of that nature. So HBAR is getting ready to be heavily used, heavily regulated, and heavily embedded, especially in Europe, Australia, and kind of some of the Southeast Asia regions. XRP. Now, we all know XRP is an absolute fraud. They are never going to do what they claim they're going to do. Their numbers are never going to go to where they go. The United States has all but disavowed XRP. They're not going to use XRP for anything. Everyone in Congress has been talking about it recently. XRP is dead. They're going to use the Fed coin, which I've been talking about since 2019, 2020, 2021. I used to talk a lot about the Fed coin. And over the 2020 situation, a lot of things got paused and pushed back, but now they're reactivating the Fed coin. But if you look at this from XRP, XRP has escrow and line freezes, and they also can freeze your functionality. They also can cut your trust line whenever they want. And this is what a lot of people in the XRP army don't know, that you can have the rug pulled out from under you. Now, we all know that XRP owns the lion's share of XRP. Also on their governance, they decide. And so they give you this illusion and this feeling that you're part of this ecosystem and this group of people who are going to become bazillionaires. But the reality is they can actually freeze and burn your tokens both in and outside of escrow and pull your trust line anytime they want in XRP, which is wild, and one of the million reasons why XRP is completely and utterly worthless, and it's never going to go anywhere. Now, VeChain is an interesting one. The thing with VeChain, I've been invested in for a long time, and VeChain has always had a lot of problems, but the upside to VeChain, I became successful in e-commerce and building brands and sold a couple of companies and built these things out. And one thing I know is when you look for technology built for people, their communities, and their planet is kind of their slogan, but realistically being able to use VeChain in commerce, whether it's China, Indonesia, United States, South America, wherever it may be, Mexico is a big one adopting VeChain because it allows you for distribution controls and product controls. That said, VeChain does have authority-based transaction controls, which is one thing that a lot of people seem to overlook, which allows them to do a centralized freeze of any tokens. Now, VeChain is a little bit different because these tokens are designed to actually use. Unlike most cryptos that aren't even designed to use and don't have really any functionality or don't have any utility, VeChain actually does. And so that's why this is so unbelievably important. And VeChain is not going to be used necessarily for social IDs, but they are going to be used for social credit scores based on products. So it's going to be able to track the products you buy. So pretty soon, you're going to be controlled by your government, especially in Europe and Canada and Australia. You're going to be controlled by your government. They're going to tell you where you can go, what you can buy, what you can eat, what things cost. They're also starting to add additional taxes and fees. So even in Canada, when they're always talking about their free healthcare, not for long, because if you don't meet their criteria based on social credit score, you're going to get additional health taxes. You're going to have to pay additional health credits because you don't fall within their line. Maybe you eat meat, maybe you eat junk food, maybe you have a birthday party for your child. You're going to have to pay additional for that, and it's also going to hurt your healthcare credits and your healthcare points. And so all these things are going to come into play. VeChain is actually going to be one of the ones that can help initiate that. Cosmos is another one, and Cosmos is definitely an interesting one, especially on the validator consensus side, because of all the controls they have on the back end of Cosmos. Now, the IBC pause and the address bans with Cosmos are causing a massive problem, and it's the reason I will never configure anything over the Cosmos blockchain, and I will never use their technology stack. And that's really what they built out. They built out for layer 2s, and you got to understand, it's not just these blockchains, but all the layer 2s and all the layer 3s on these can be compromised in the same way, because the admin controls run into, so you can never be truly decentralized and truly peer-to-peer if you're a layer 2 or a layer 3, and that's where a lot of people get this stuff twisted. And so with Cosmos, because they have the IBC pause, now in theory, this is not a blacklist. These other ones can blacklist and can take your tokens anytime that you want. And this is why governments are using these, because they can see what's in your name, where the addresses are connected, where the on and off ramps are connected, and they're cutting it. Like I told you before, they are not using this, and I'm going to explain this at the end and explain to you what you can do. So understand, you need to see what's happening so I can tell you why it's happening, how it's happening, and how to fix it. But with these things integrated, there's really not a lot you can do. And so it gives them a huge amount of control and a huge amount of access that they really should not have. Now, Polkadot is another really big one that is being used in Europe. Now, they're gamifying life. You may know that Polkadot has done a lot in the AI and the gaming industry. It's built for the billions, right? They want everyone to be on their Web3 ecosystem. Governments behind the scenes all through the EU are utilizing this to gamify your life through a social credit score and mandate your digital IDs, and your digital IDs are only going to work based on, what you can do directly through them. Well, they have a parachain freezes, and they have freeze enabled relays. Now, you may think, well, they can't freeze my coins. No, that's way worse, because when they do parachain, basically it allows them to compartmentalize each one of you gamified, and what they're calling gamification is basically going to be your social credit score, and then the amount of points you get in life are the amount of points you're going to be allowed to use. So whether or not you're allowed to leave your house, whether or not you're allowed to drive your car, whether or not you're allowed to travel, whether or not you're allowed to go outside your 15-minute city, this is all coming to Europe right now. And this is why getting yourself outside of the system is so incredibly important, because companies like Polkadot on the Web3 are gamifying the entire internal and external infrastructure. And because they have parachain and relay freezes, you need to understand how bad the relay freeze is. I explained to you in the beginning how a base level blockchain, P2P, peer-to-peer, and decentralized works. Well, because they have relay controls, they can break off each individual person based on their social credit score. And that's why this is so dangerous and so scary, and you need to understand. Now, this is probably the one that frustrates me the most. This is Cardano. This is a blockchain that is supposed to be decentralized. And you know what? It is. It is decentralized for all intensive purposes. However, there are some very unfortunate situations when it comes to Cardano, because they can do what's called a hard fork and an address exclusion. So what a hard fork is they can actually hard fork the address and leave your address behind. Now you may be thinking, well, that's a little bit extreme. You're correct. This one is the least likely on my list that you are going to have trouble with. And I've actually invested heavy in Cardano, and I think they have a bright future because they're actually building utility that might work. They are decentralized, they are peer-to-peer, but they do have this one feature that allows government intervention. And they recently had a couple of meetings. They're based here in the United States. They had a couple of meetings with the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and the current administration. Understand that it doesn't matter if it's right or left in the United States politics. These are middle managers that are ran by the 13 bloodlines across the board. And it doesn't matter what they want. The system is being implemented. It doesn't matter if the red shirts or the blue shirts are in power. They're two wings of the exact same bird, and they're not going to add any value to your life. Now, because they can do a hard fork address exclusion, it would actually basically take, under the new Genius Act, if you're an American, it would take a court order. If you're outside the United States, they can do it anytime they want. You have no repercussions, no ramifications. You basically just lose. But to do a hard fork actually takes more effort than you think. and is not valuable unless it's a very high value target. So unless you're talking about FBI most wanted list type of person, a hard fork is not really realistic. So I wanted to put this on this list to be fully 100% transparent like I always am. But the reality of the situation is Cardano is the least likely on this list that you're going to have any trouble with. Now, this one, on the other hand, Tezos, is a little bit different story. You're going to have freeze-based governance vote. This is one of the worst kinds of blacklists and freezes because they are directly embedded with the government. I'll never invest a penny in this company or any company that does freeze-based governance vote, because what this does is it allows the rich, the most powerful people in these coins to create a board and decide who to burn and who not to burn. And when I say burn, I mean your actual coins. So they can burn your coins out from under you. They don't even have to blacklist them. They can basically freeze them to the blockchain, meaning they're stuck in time. They cannot be cashed out. They cannot be moved. They can't be transferred to another wallet. And there's a whole bunch of other features. And this even happens if you're on a hardware wallet. So for those of you saying, my crypto's on a hardware wallet, crypto has changed. It is moving to on and off ramping. This is why I've told you guys to get everything out of your name for so long. It has to be out of your name and with the quickness. Otherwise, they can parachain, fork, or freeze or tether directly to, and it's completely gone. And that, the worst part is there's no ramifications. So again, whether you have $1 or $1 billion in crypto, you've lost it and there's nothing you can do about it, all because you set yourself up improperly. So this is why these things are so important. This particular blockchain, because they use the governance body and the governance board, this is, I would argue, 10 times worse because the way that they've structured it. Now, Near Protocol is another one that a lot of you guys talk about a lot, and I get asked a lot of questions about. The thing with that is they've got char level transaction filters. Now, this is a little bit different because this is the blockchain, like they says here, actually the blockchain for AI, but it's actually built on an AI-based protocol. They're using this all across gamification, all across Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, South America. This one's really big in South America and parts of Asia and the Northern Africa. And the reason this one's so popular is because of the AI-based components. Now, when you have something with char level transaction freezes and you utilize your internal AI bots, this is a first layer to several of your favorite coins. What this allows them to do is in-time real level geo tracking. So when we talk about, the gamification, because that's what's happening. I've been talking to a lot of people in Congress lately, and I've been blown away by what they've been saying. And as somebody who's not a gamer, I didn't grow up a gamer. I'm not a gamer now. I don't care about video games. My kids rarely play video games, but they do from time to time. But my kids are very dedicated in the things that they pursue in life. And so, video games is low on the priority list. But I understand why video games are so addictive and so popular. They just never were really that addictive to me. I have too many things in life I enjoy doing. So they're gamifying. And when I was talking to some staffers in DC last week after the holiday, they're literally gamifying the life in Europe. They're gamifying life all through the EU. And based on how you play the game is based on how you're allowed to live. This is absolutely pathetic, atrocious. And the fact that more people aren't literally storming the streets, but you've allowed them to take everything from you. What are you going to do? You spray manure on the building with your tractor? Because that seems to be all you can do in Europe. Like, it's so far gone. It's actually quite sad. It's hard to watch because, Europe can't rise up because sadly you've allowed them to take everything from you. And now they're taking the last thing, which is your time and your labor, because they're going to control what you can do, where you can go. I mean, basically, if you're living in Europe over the next, 18 months, you're basically going to be a 12-year-old for the rest of your life. You're going to be a 12-year-old if you live in Europe, because you're going to have less freedoms than the average 12-year-old by living in Europe. This is the most pathetic thing, and they're literally gamifying it, and they think it's exciting and fun. We saw Keir Starmer in the UK. A bunch of people in the UK did this huge petition to get the digital ID shut down. And he said, no, we're not doing it. And then you guys just backed down, put your tail between your legs, and went back to bed. And it's really weird to me. You had a couple million people say, we don't want this. The government said, tough, we're doing it. What are you going to do about it? And you just went home and went to sleep. So, if you live in the UK or you live in Europe, your life is basically over. You're going to be a 12-year-old in the next 18 months for the rest of your existence. I would recommend get your stuff out of your name and leave as quick as humanly possible, because this is coming and these AI blockchains are going to absolutely annihilate you. And they're going to control everything. You're noticing a trend here also, the gamification. You'll see that a lot, the AI-based gamification. And that's how you're structuring life. A lot of people in the United States thought that they were going to build, some blockchain based on that worthless XRP. No, they've got the Fed coin and the Fed-based blockchain where it's basically able to structure, but the United States needs all the laws. The United States has none of these laws in place, so none of this is legal in the United States, and they've tried passing it for the last 7 years, and they failed. The only law they've passed in the United States is they federalized the credit score, but a social credit score is still illegal, and a digital ID is still illegal, and a CBDC is still illegal in the US. Now, that could change, and they're trying to change it actively, but to date, it hasn't changed, and so none of those things can come in right now. A version of the social credit score will come into the US, but it's not going to be as stiff as the ones through Europe and Canada and Australia and South America. And the reason is, now the only place to reject this was Central America. All of the countries in Central America have rejected this, so good for them. Also, the Caribbean rejected it. So far, the US has rejected it. And there's a few countries in Asia and that have rejected it, and that's about it. 100% of Europe is on board, except for Liechtenstein and, Switzerland has their own internal system, which is not going to be nearly. So if you were going to live in Europe, the only country that's even remotely doable is Switzerland. But the gamification. So Algorand has the Atmos transfer reservation keys. Now, revocation keys. Sorry. The revocation keys on Algorand allow them. Look at this guy, he's flying. Look at these guys, are having so much fun with their games. You would think that this is the coolest thing in the world. You guys are going to have so much fun with your social credit score. Maybe you could have a social credit score on a Game Boy. That looks fun. Look at this guy, mind blown. He's flying, all kinds of stuff. They always make this look so much fun. You got bikes, you got, Candyland, you got an Algorand Game Boy and a barbecue. So much fun, guys. Can't wait. So what's actually happened behind the scenes, the United States has been investing huge amounts of money paralleling this. They've been buying they've been doing the age-old adage, buying the dip, but it's not so much buying the dip. They're buying the companies, and what they're doing is they're prepping them for the one world government. These are some of the companies that are going to be used. Now, there's quite a few others. There's 19 other blockchains that are currently under scrutiny, but the ones I'm showing you here today are some of the worst offenders, and these are ones that you need to understand are going to absolutely annihilate people, and they're going to control people. So buying into them is one thing, but setting yourself up properly. Do not have these in your name. All of these coins are actively tracking you right now. All of these coins know exactly who you are on a geolocation basis. Now, if everything's in your DAP trust, like I teach you guys how to do, like I tell you guys been doing for a couple years now, you're good. They can't harm you. But if it's not, well, then they're not going to harm you yet, but I'm going to show you and tell you what's going to happen here in a minute. So Algorand is a problem on that basis. Now, here's one that's going to break your heart, Ethereum. The problem with Ethereum is how much of crypto and the blockchain technology is built on ETH. This is a huge problem and a huge issue because of all the layer 2s, all the layer 3s, all the substacks, all the tech stacks. And ETH actually has ETH has a few things. They have an emergency pause, which we've seen happen before when they basically tried to do the base layer fork when Vitalik went through all his mental breakdowns. And they have the governance of the EIP 3074. Now, this is similar to the governance board on Tezos and some of the other ones, only it's a lot more advanced, and the government is actually on Ethereum's board effectively. I mean, it's, CIA basically, but they're technically, you've got Mossad level, CIA level, MI6 level, board members, wink, wink, on Ethereum. The government consensus of the United States runs the board effectively at this point through a third-party governance. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to do attack nodes similar to how they tried to do to Monero. Of course, on Monero, they failed in embarrassingly spectacular fashion because the way Monero is designed with ring signatures. Unfortunately, Ethereum has zero privacy built in and zero digital security. So the good thing about Monero is you actually have to use the EILs and the governance board, and the users of Ethereum can actually fight back. So this is the second one on the list that has some promise. As much as I'm not a fan really of Ethereum, it actually has promise because the way that it's structured, similar to Cardano. Cardano and Ethereum are the only two on this list so far where the people can fight back. The rest of them, if the company wants to burn you, wants to destroy you, wants to blacklist your address, wants a complete takeover, there's nothing you can do about it, both legally and technologically. There's literally nothing you can do about it. Ethereum and Cardano, you have some tools in your tool belt, which is good. This next one is an absolute joke and an embarrassment to society. They've literally degraded what smart contracts and a smart chain was supposed to be, and that's Binance Smart Chain. This is one of the ones on the list that I would tell you should never be a part of, in my opinion. You know, harnessing decentralization to make the impossible possible. There's a reason your founder literally found himself in prison. Binance Smart Chain validator-based blacklist. Binance literally does not pull any punches. They literally have, at the validator admin level, a blacklist feature that is controlled by the government as part of CZ's pardon. Understand, he was pardoned by the US government so he can re-add the features and push his product in from a chairman in a global distribution. Understand that the blacklist feature, do you know who controls that now? The federal government of the United States control everything going through the Binance chain. Binance chain, in my opinion, is the most dangerous chain on the blockchain right now. And it's the one chain I would tell all of you to never buy again is BNB or anything attached to Binance. If you have an account with Binance, I would shut it down today. If you have anything on Binance, I would move it today. If you have anything staked on Binance, I would move it expeditiously because it is completely and utterly Fed controlled, which is what got CZ his pardon. And this is an absolute annihilation and abomination of a crypto product. I know they once had promise. Those days are long gone. Now, Polygon. It's not our first billion that the government has given us to sell you out. Oh, they forgot to type that part. So Polygon they have a dynamic address filtering transaction pools. Polygon is also really big in DeFi. DeFi is riddled with feds. DeFi is full of feds and they are tripping people up left and right. And they are building not only blacklists, but they are building audit lists and basically lists of people they're getting ready to throw in jail because there's a lot of people who are not properly doing their taxes. There's a lot of people who are not properly doing a lot of things in DeFi, especially in the trade pools and in the deep liquidity pools. And they are getting ready to seize all of them unless you have all your ducks in a row. And this is why you should never do DeFi unless everything's in your business because you need your crypto as revenue. Never do DeFi in your name, ever, ever, ever. And I've said that before. I hope nobody watching this is actually doing DeFi in their name. If you're not, you need to get a DAP trust immediately. You need to structure yourself. If it's been within the last 3 years, I've had a lot of clients that I've been able to help restructure so they don't get destroyed by taxes. In a lot of cases, you can use the revenue on a 3-year depreciation basis to be able to save yourself. If it's outside of that, you might be going to jail because this is a really, really big issue. I've been talking to a couple of my really good friends in the FBI, and they've been telling me they are mounting the forces, getting ready to go after all of these people who do not have their ducks in a row in DeFi. DeFi is the one industry in crypto they're going to attack. They're not attacking anything else. They're going to attack the heck out of the DeFi/trade world industry. And if you do not have your ducks in a row, that's it for you, man. That's it. You need to get your ducks in a row immediately. The government shutdown added time, which was good because we basically suspended the first quarter. So now they're getting ready to go on recess. which the stuff that was supposed to go into effect January 1st, obviously legally can't. I'm trying to get the new dates. I've been working really hard to do that, but because of all the holidays, everything is going so incredibly slow, which is a good thing. You want things going slow. It's a good thing to have more time because they shut the government down for 45 days. All these things are good for the people, but it's a bad thing because when things are slow like that, they're doing a lot of nefarious activities behind the scenes. They're not just sitting on their couch playing tiddlywinks. They're actually doing really bad things for the people. So yeah, with Polygon and their dynamic address filtering and their transaction pools, this gives them a lot of flexibility. Now, unlike a lot of these other tokens, Polygon can't just freeze your assets to the blockchain and basically make them irrelevant. They can't just nuke them to the blockchain. What they can do is filter the pools to the feds because it's riddled with feds, and then basically they'll take it from there. You'll get a knock at your door because all these are geo-targeted, especially if you're not running it through how I've taught you for years now. I know you're using Tor when you do this. I know you're at least using Whonix, or maybe you're using a side load of Tails. I know you're doing this on Linux. I know you would never do this on your phone because nobody does crypto on their phone unless it's a dedicated crypto phone, because I've taught you this on this channel for years. I've made countless advanced videos on all of this stuff for years. And so I know by this point, none of you are doing that. None of you have your crypto in your name if you're watching this video, because I've been telling you how dangerous this is for years. And now it's coming to fruition, and the walls are starting to close in. So if you have it, you need to act unbelievably fast, or you're going to be in a world of hurt. Solana is another big one. Now, I think Solana has a very bright future, but Solana has a lot of problems. Powerful for developers, fast for everyone. Solana is trying to take over for Ethereum, and make no mistake, they understand that because they've got a runtime config and it updates their blacklist. Now, this has an internal board on a blacklist. I don't know if there are feds on the inside of Solana. I have not been told that like I've been told that about these other ones like Ethereum, obviously, and many other ones, but it would make sense because the way they're running the blacklist is basically the upgraded version of Ethereum. Everything on Solana is a better version of Ethereum trying to take over Ethereum. But the problem with their development pool is it gives them a lot of flexibility to be able to burn tokens whenever they want. And it makes sure that not only are you not going to have privacy, not only are you going to have glass house level transparency for you, but the the admin user and the EIP transaction side is going to be completely anonymous, and it's going to be spun chain, and so there's nothing you can do about it. And you can't even figure out where it's coming from, and you can't get a homing address because it's got similar to like a rotational IP address. It's got a similar feature to that. I don't know the technological term, frankly, because they developed it and it's not a public-facing software. Again, I'm guessing it's government-based, but it's just a guess. I don't want to say I'm certain or I have a source because I don't, but everyone I've talked to assumes it's government-based because no one else has been able to duplicate it, which gives them the ability to push tokens and to push coins into existence and to push them to follow basically think of like a tracker on your car. They can put geotags and trackers on each individual one. When you build on this, which they're building a lot of products on this, it's going to allow them to tie data, so metadata, to it indefinitely. And that's what you don't want. That's what you should never have. That's why the simplicity of Bitcoin, for example, is so powerful. And you won't see Bitcoin on this list. Bitcoin would never be on a list like this because the way that the Bitcoin blockchain works. Same with Monero. Monero could never be on a list like this. Pirate Chain could never be on a list like this. Even chains I'm not a big fan of, like Zcash, could never be on a list like this because the way that it's structured. But a lot of chains you'll find on lists like this because of their internal flaws and because of who they're working with /for, which is against you. So Solana is a very up in the air, weird one that we're learning more and more about. Avalanche is a big one. Avalanche has a governance triggered transaction halts. Now, the thing about halts is they can be indefinite. You may have governance triggered, so you're going to have a governance board where they can trigger halts. The problem with Avalanche's halts that are indefinite. Avalanche is a little bit of an outdated one trying to catch up. Again, the gamification, so they've got a multiplication of the gamification units that they can use on you. We talked about Near, we talked about AI, we talked about Avalanche, we've talked about Polkadot. So there's several different ones they can utilize through cross-chain tracking. What this does allows them to verify the nodes consistently and it's basically like having multiple witnesses, right? And so it gives them multiple data sets so they can verify with certainty, which makes their job a lot easier when they're tracking you and when they're structuring your social credit score. So again, you're going to have a user interface. You're going to have an app effectively that's going to be almost like a game, but the character in the game is going to be you. You're going to be allowed to have an avatar. So from what I've been told, you're going to have an avatar in the game, and then you're going to, and of course you can make it yourself because it is quite literally you. And then based on what you do in life, and this thing's going to track you throughout your life, and it's got to be on you. You know, it's going to be the law for it to be on you all the time. They're going to start injecting them into your arm, obviously, but I'm pretty sure that's coming later. We're probably at least 3 to 5 years away from you being forced injected. But understand in Europe, you're going to be forced injected, obviously. And the people who don't rebel against the world government are going to be force injected. Good thing is, like I said, Central America is rebelling. Most of South America is getting on board. Mexico got on board. Mexico is falling quickly. That's a sad one. A lot of places in the Caribbean are still standing strong. There's a lot of places in places in Asia that are standing strong. But yeah, the Western world is a joke. There's a few standouts in the Western world. The United States technically is running all this stuff, but it's illegal in our own country. But we're running it based on the prowess of your guys' government wanting us to, right? They're wanting us to push it because we're funding a big portion of it. Tron is Tron's a pretty bad one. Tron has a built-in blacklist module. Now, I think Tron sucks personally. Decentralize the web. Tron has been selling the same old sorry, tired story for a long time now. And they've been trying to be a leader in Web3, and they've kind of watched themselves get passed. I mean, it says, 350 accounts and 12.3 billion transactions. So that sounds like it's something, but the reality of the situation is Tron is slowly becoming outdated tech. Now, they've had some recent updates that look pretty reasonable, and they've got a pretty large ecosystem. They've got a huge governance body, but that's not really helping the case of their utility. Tron has utility. I want to be very clear, but they don't have utility in the base where they're going to be on a strong set use case. But from a digital ID perspective, Tron adds a lot of value because of because their ecosystem. And so that gives them a lot of flexibility from digital IDs. Understand your digital ID has to be a public facing blockchain, which gives you that flexibility. And that way they can have a point system, which is in real time based on what you're able to do. Like I said, if you're allowed to start your car today, if you're allowed to go to the store today, if you're allowed to leave your house today, if you're allowed to buy food today, what kind of food are you allowed to buy? Are you allowed to get gas today? Are you allowed to, use the phone today? Are you allowed to use the internet today? All these things your government's trying to do. Well, these are going to be based on these systems, and you're going to be in their ecosystem. And like I said, it's going to be forced upon you. At first, it's going to be illegal not to have it with you at all times, which of course you can go to jail for. I mean, in Europe, you can go to jail for a Facebook post, and people are like, are they really going to put you in? Yeah, they're going to put you in jail fast if you don't have this with you 100% of the time. But then after that, you're going to be force injected. So they're basically just going to go to each one of you, and they're going to mandate you get injected, and they're going to put it in you. And at that point, you don't even own yourself anymore. So that's where they're going in the European version of this right now, and the Canadian version. The Canadian version is probably the Canadian version, the UK version are probably the worst, followed by the European version, and then followed by the Australian version. The Australian version is a little bit more relaxed for right now. We'll see how that goes over the next couple of years. Australia looks like it's got some bad things happening, but it's not moving as fast. If I was in any of these countries, Canada would be by far the worst. And this is what they're doing. They're taking control of this, and they're starting to use it against you. So if we look at the crypto market, I mean, the crypto market has pretty much stayed very similar, 3.2 trillion. we've seen some ups and downs. Bitcoin is at 93. It was at 125. I mean, that's peanuts at this point. Ethereum's at 33. It was 48. It's, so we're down a little, but not enough to matter. We are going to see a washout. A lot of people asked me when we had this recent dip and Bitcoin got to like 80, low 80s, low to mid 80s. People were saying, is this it? Is this the big one? Is this when they're going to wash out? No, it's not the big one. So what people are doing right now is what's called wash trading. And so with wash trading, while that's highly illegal in the stock market, it's not in most crypto markets. And so what they do is they sell and then they rebuy the next day, which allows them to validate their losses and not have to have specific tax burdens, especially in businesses. So, if you have your crypto in your business, which I hope by now you do, if you don't, I hope you're at least working on it with the time that we have left before it's too late and you're completely hosed. But with this situation, it gives you that flexibility, right? And so a lot of people are in that whole trade mindset because the end of the year, and they're just justifying their tax base. That was the only reason this went down. They do the same thing in the stock market, but with the stock market, you can't wash trade, but there are some other accounting tricks you can do in the stock market. And that's why the stock market, and you'll notice the stock market and the crypto market does that same little dive every single December. Well, between Thanksgiving and mid-December, it always does it. There's not a specific date, but I swear a lot of the big traders get together and say, okay, this is the date, sell everything, pull, hold, buy, dive, take our fake losses, pump it back up. And then they do this thing time and time and time again. Now, getting everything outside of your name, because a lot of these big chains, and you'll notice some of the chains I talked about, Ethereum, second biggest, right? XRP, fourth biggest, Binance, fifth biggest, Solana, sixth biggest, Tron, eighth biggest. Dogecoin is not even a real thing. Tron, eighth biggest, Cardano, 10th, right? I didn't talk about Chainlink because Chainlink actually passed the audit, which was interesting. Hyperliquid, let's see, Stellar's a good one, Zcash. Monero's the best crypto to ever exist. You can see some of these. Oh, Sui's an interesting one. I'm going to be talking about them soon, but they've got some interesting features. Avalanche, we talked about. Avalanche has issues. HBAR has issues. Shiba Inu is a pretend meme coin. Cosmos has issues. Polkadot. So see how scary this is? This is a huge. I mean, we're not even in the top 50. We're like at what 20% of the top 28 coins, and still going, right? And so this is a serious problem. And Near Protocol, which is a really big one, 38, right? So these are not some just random. ICP is one of my favorite. You notice they're not on there. They have a really strong blockchain. I've been a big fan of ICP for a long time. But yeah, so it is cause for concern, and it is cause to tread lightly. Now, again, the one thing you can do is, like I tell you, when you have your crypto in your DAP trust, you have a rotational address through your institutional account. This is why it's so important. You can't get that on a hardware wallet, and you can't get that on a personal account. You can get multiple addresses, but your exit, your node is going to be the same. And a lot of people, I'll make these videos, people say, I just got a hardware wallet and I can change my exit address. So they don't know it's me. Are you kidding me? This is not the 1960s. Of course they know it's you. All you have is a multiplier address based on the same node. And you don't even understand the cryptographic hash, how it works clearly, or you would understand that the chipset in the hardware has the metadata that is attached to the address. That's why if you do not have a rotational address through a DAP, through your institutional account, which you can only get if you have a DAP or if you have a digital trust at bare minimum, then you're completely hosed because your metadata is direct. Your crypto is not revenue. It is income, right? So it's income for you. You do not want your crypto to be income for you. You want it to be revenue through your business, and you don't want it through a base set business. You want it through an institutional account. If you have it through something like an LLC, yes, you're going to have the corporate veil, so you will be protected on a base level, but you're not going to have a rotational address. You're still going to have the geo mapping and the geo tagging, which is still going to be a fundamental problem when you try to on and off ramp, because if you ever want to use your crypto and if you ever want to get out, that'll help you from the standpoint of not being seized. So your crypto won't be able to be directly seized through you. So that is good. That's a small step, but a good step. But if you really want to be able to use your crypto, if you want to be able to cash out in the next bull run, you need to be able to structure yourself, because they're going to be able to geotag every wallet. And they're already starting to do it in a lot of places. They're already getting ready to start adding these geotags. So you need to understand that, and you need to get yourself out of the system when you're going through this process. Also understand they're going to be issuing a blockchain-based identification verifier across the world late next year, which will give everyone a blockchain geotag account. Now, people who are set up properly, like Elon Musk is never going to use that because he does everything through his business, right? He literally can buy the institution. You take rich and powerful politicians, they're never going to use it. You take people like me, I'm never going to use it because I'll never need it because I've set myself up properly. But if you take people who are small business owners, or you take people who are just regular people, they're going to be completely hosed because they're going to have to use that geo tracking account. Now, it's not a digital ID and it's not a social credit score, but it starts to track all assets on and off ramp, because they're starting to move the digital financial system to a digital blockchain. Not to be confused with the CBDC. They're being very, very sneaky about it. They're doing this with the dollar. They're doing this with the yuan. They're doing this with the peso. They're doing this with the yen. They're doing this with the ruble. They're doing this with the pound. They're doing this with the euro. They're doing this everywhere. They're doing this everywhere. And this is going to be every single currency in the world. And again, it's not a CBDC. It is a transparent transactional layer for the world financial government. And it's also part of the, oh my gosh, it's part of the, not NATO. I'm drawing a blank. The World Organization. You got to be kidding me. Oh, I'm so sick of these organizations. It's the most basic organization. Are you kidding me right now? Not NATO. Most of you got to be screaming it at the thing right now. Well, they are working on a NATO for the world. So they're working on a, from the World Health Organization, they're working on a collective, and it's going to be for human health and disease services. And we've seen this through the World Economic Forum. And you'll see this similar to NATO. NATO's actually rolling some things out, but through the international order, you're gonna see this ruled out, and you're also gonna see the Global War Commission be part of it. I'm trying to find, yeah. So we're going to see the Global War Commission. Let's see what it says. The Commonwealth War Commission for Commerce since WW2. Yeah, and this is becoming a massive, massive issue. So at the UN, that's what I'm thinking of. My gosh, the United Nations, right? So many organizations going through my head. Yeah, the UN is formulating basically an assembly for the world government. And that's what they've been depicting behind closed doors for a while now, is actually a one world government system. Obviously, the United States is financing the entire thing. Now, this is biblical. This has been talked about forever, and we all know this is happening. But they're using Europe and the UK and Canada and Australia as kind of the main test base. They did beta testing in Africa, and here's the funny thing. The Africans were too difficult to deal with, and they fought back and rebelled, and we gave up on the beta testing. And all the reports said that the Europeans would be the easiest group along with the Canadians. They're even worried about the Australians fighting back. And that's why they are soft handing the Australians, because the Australians might actually fight back. There's some tough people down in Australia. There's not a lot of them, but there are some. They're never going to do this in the United States, because the United States would go ballistic with, Second Amendment would rule the streets, and the government could potentially be overthrown. Now, if the military was involved, that wouldn't be possible, because the military weapons, and I talked about that actually in my previous video, if we did a full-blown revolution, it's just simply not going to happen with today's warfare and weaponry, drones. But if it was actually a civil war scenario, or it was a base level government overrun, then yeah, they would have a lot of problems. Also, it would crash the economy, it would do a lot of things. And so what they want to do is they want to test this. Well, they've decided that the two easiest countries on earth to test this on are Canada. Well, okay, I get it. The EU is not a country, it's a series of countries, but basically they've given up on their sovereignty together, and they've given up on their autonomy and freedom together. And then the UK, I know the UK is not, but it's basically, the UK is, all by all intents and purposes, worse than the EU. But yeah, so I should say three: the EU, UK, and Canada. Because the Africans fought back so much and so hard and disemboweled everything that they literally failed. They pushed them out of Africa and failed. And now they're talking about a united Africa, because they were so pissed that the Westerners were trying to basically colonize them again, but they were trying to financially and digitally colonize them, not the way they colonized them before. And so they failed miserably on the Africans. They know they can't do this in most of Asia. They know they can't do this anywhere in South America and get any teeth. And a lot of the smaller nations have disemboweled it and said they're not even going to do it. And so they decided the only countries they can test this on, and they can be heavy-handed on, is the EU, Canada, and the UK. And even Australia. They're doing a little bit with Australia, but they're scared of Australia because Australians fight back, where Canadians roll over and just do whatever they're told, when they're told, how they're told. The weakest people on earth, unfortunately. And there's some nice people in Canada, but for some reason, Canadians have just given up. I don't understand. And I've got a huge client base in Canada, one of my biggest client bases, and a lot of great people up there. And I've helped a lot of Canadians get outside the system. Probably in the last 2 years, Canada might be my biggest client base, because so many people are struggling so hard over in that country. And I've helped so many people in Canada. But my gosh, has their country just given up? And it's the same thing with the UK. UK is another one where I have a ton of clients, because I'm helping a lot of people in the UK save their life, basically, because of what's happening. And Europe a lot as well, through Europe. And yeah, but it's sad. When I saw that, and when I've been talking to people in Europe and people in Washington, D.C. about this, it was actually sad to hear, because you think about who Europe used to be. Europe used to be the mightiest place on earth, all through the UK, all through, France and Italy and Germany and, all these places, Scandinavia with the Vikings. And now they are just the most absolute annihilated places on earth. They've just given up. And it's really sad to see, but it is what it is. You guys have, unless you're ever going to fight back, which they don't think you are, they've literally deemed you the easiest country on earth to dominate. On earth. They would take you over. Villages in Africa would fight back, but you won't. You won't do anything. You just roll over and take it. It's unbelievable, but it's facts, unfortunately. So getting yourself out of the system is incredibly important. You do not want to comply with this. The only way to structure yourself. Now, here's the good thing about business accounts when it comes to social credit scores. The thing about social credit scores is businesses are going to have social credit scores as well. The good thing about businesses is, what can businesses do? Businesses can actually buy credits in specific areas. So similar to like pollution credits, things of that nature. Also, what businesses can do is they can structure themselves on authorized user accounts. I've talked to you about this a lot. So even if you had a social credit score, you wouldn't have to ever use your personal one. It would basically just be zero. It's kind of like if you have credit, right? You can just not use your credit, or you can have a 400 credit score, an 800 credit score, right? It depends on what you do. So you're going to be able to opt out the system, provided you're structured through an institutional account, or you can operate through a DApp, like I've talked to you about frequently, because I've been really studying hard on exactly what a lot of the politicians, a lot of the CEOs and people are doing, because I know they're not going to comply with this. So are they going to technically, in theory, have an account? Yes, kind of like they technically have a social security card, but they don't use their credit. I don't use my personal credit ever. Everything goes through the business. Well, you can do the same thing with that. You can do everything through quote unquote business credit, but you're going to be able to do it in a fashion that's vastly different. It's actually going to benefit businesses a lot because it's going to give you a lot more flexibility. It's going to give you a lot more tools. It's going to give you a lot more tax breaks. It's going to give you a lot more financial resources that you wouldn't have otherwise. So it's going to hurt the people 10 times worse, but it's actually going to help businesses on an institutional level, which is really disgusting, to be brutally honest with you. It's horrible, but it's the way our system's designed. Our system puts, and I've told you guys this, every video I've ever made, the ethos is we put businesses above people. I wish we didn't on a personal level, but we do. It's why I do what I do. It's why my team does what they do, because we in this country and in all over the world put businesses above people. And so you need to understand that, and you need to participate in how these things work and understand how these things are being used against you and take action on that immediately, because the wolf is now officially at the door and he is scratching, growling, and he is getting ready to tear that thing down. But yeah, that's my take on that. I've got a few more really, really important videos I'm going to get out before the end of the year. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're watching. I've got 2 or 3 more videos I'm going to get out before the end of the year that are of really, really important topics. But I wanted to start with this one because I think this is so important that you guys actually understand on an administrative or base level, blockchain level layer, what you guys are getting into and the risks of it, so you could make it work to yourself. Now, a smart person is going to take what I said. They're going to say, okay, I need to set up myself. I need to structure myself, and I need to turn these things to my advantage so I can make generational wealth, which is what probably a lot of you are going to do. You're going to set yourself up properly. You're going to get your crypto out of your name. You're going to get ghosted like I talk about. You're going to do all these features, and then you're going to set yourself up for the next bull run to make generational wealth. That's great. I wish you well. Some of you are going to panic and you're going to do nothing, or you might try to like, well, maybe if I sell all my crypto and hide under my bed, this will all go away. It's not going away. It's coming for you. Then you're just going to make yourself worse off. So understand that action is required in this life to get anywhere, because the other side, the opposition, spends 12 hours a day figuring out how they can make your life basically not worth living. So you need to spend your 12 protecting yourself, your family, and your future generations, making your life not only worth living, but in an arena where you can thrive. And that's really, really important.